Welcome to the first section of the Developing Coaching Skills module. And in this presentation we're going to really clarify about what coaching is. I'm sure you've already heard the term used to mean what seem to be very different types of interventions. And so I'm wondering, if I were to ask you right now what coaching is, just how confident you'd be about giving me an answer. There are many ways of helping people in the workplace, and coaching is one of them. And yet when you talk to different people about it, they often have very different ideas about what a coach does and how they work. So the objectives of this presentation are that at the end of it you'll be able to explain what is meant by coaching in the workplace, as opposed to many other different forms of helping. You'll be able to describe when to use coaching and how it will help you and your teams reach their goals. And you'll be able to identify how people learn from their experience and the relevance of that to coaching. So let's start first by thinking about what's the difference between coaching and mentoring. So those two terms are often used in organizations, and I find that people are not very clear about what's the difference between the two. And you might like to just jot down some thoughts that you have at the moment about that. So if we look at mentoring, then mentoring is very much about a relationship between a less experienced and a more experienced person that helps that person be able to get the best out of the work that they're doing and to be able to navigate in their world of work. And the mentor will draw on their experiences to give advice, and they will probably use their connections to open doors for the person. And also on top of that, they may well do a little bit of coaching with them too. But it's a much more encompassing role than perhaps a coach is. So a mentor is someone to learn from. Whereas coaching, on the other hand, is about helping the client learn from their own experiences and from looking at it from their own model of the world. So it is someone to learn with. So next we might want to think about what's the difference between coaching and training. And you may want to just jot down your thoughts about that. So if we think about training, training is traditionally thought of as being the process of providing knowledge, skills and attitude, and of changing those for somebody. And I find that the distinctions between coaching and training are getting less and less as time goes on. So coaching now is often used in training programs. So some training programs are delivered purely to impart knowledge and skills or to change attitudes. However, many now incorporate aspects of self-exploration in line with the definition of coaching. And trainers will often have people do exercises that help themselves, that they will ask questions and get people to think out the answers for themselves, just as you would do in coaching. And the next one that's worth exploring is to think about what is the difference between coaching and counselling. And this becomes particularly important if both are offered in an organisation as an intervention, so that people know which situations should be referred to a coach and which situations should be referred to a counsellor. Counselling is a relationship really where the counsellor is responsible for helping a client to overcome what's very often a past-orientated problem. So it's a problem that's happening now, but it's being caused by something that happened in the person's past, or several things that happened in their past. Whereas generally, and this is not always the case, but generally a coach is more focused on the future, and a counsellor then is more focused on what has happened in the past. So a coach will work with someone to look at what their outcomes are, what their goals are, and where they want to go, and thinking about how they can get there, and maybe what is preventing them doing that at the moment. Whereas a counsellor will look at something that's happening now but has its roots in the past and help the person think through that situation so that they can move forward in a more positive way. So if we look at some definitions of coaching, the first one we've got here is that coaching is a partnership in which the coach helps the client to achieve their personal best and to produce the results they want in their personal and professional lives. So there's a few important things in that definition really. First of all, that a coach is there to help someone to be at their best. And secondly is to start to get the person to think about, what do they really want? What sort of results do they really want in their personal and their professional lives? And to start to think about how they can achieve those. Here's another definition of coaching, and this comes from Julie Starr. And it says, that coaching comes from early forms of transportation. That's stagecoach or rail coach. And that the word coaching literally means to transport someone from one place to another. And one thing all forms of coaching seem to have in common is that people are using it to help them move forward or create change. So in coaching, we are very much looking at where the person is now and where they want to get to, and helping them get from that place to the next. So helping them get from the present situation to their desired outcome, or their present results to their desired results. Another definition is that coaching, put simply, coaching is a conversation or a series of conversations one person has with another. The person who's the coach intends to produce a conversation that will benefit the other person in a way that relates to the other person's learning and progress. I rather like that definition because the art of coaching is about the art of communication, about being able to use the way that you use language, the questions that you ask and the way that you ask them, and the way that you really pay attention to the other person to be able to help them to grow and develop and progress in whatever it is that they want to do. And lastly, we have a definition that comes from Douglas Riddle, which looks specifically at leadership coaching, but I think also encompasses other forms of coaching as well. And what he said was that, leadership coaching uses the relationship between the coach and the person being coached as a platform for questioning assumptions, stimulating reflection, creating alternatives, and growing perspectives. And certainly all those aspects are very important in coaching. And all of those things are skills that a coach would want to have in their armoury. He also says the coach can be a coach by profession or a leader who uses coaching skills, and either way, leadership coaching is consciously and explicitly directed at improving the individual's leadership capacity while achieving organisational objectives. So coaching in the workplace very often has those two outcomes. One is to help the person move forward and do whatever they want to do, but also, of course, the coaching needs to help the organisation as well move towards achieving its objectives. This definition continues to say, while sometimes aimed at remedying a gap or correcting a fault, it's often focused on readying a leader for increased responsibilities, speeding acclimatization to a new challenge, or providing an objective sounding board and thought partner when everyone else around a leader is pushing a particular viewpoint. And I think there's some important points in there as well, because one of the things about the coach is that they are someone who, even if they are in a role within the organisation, when they're coaching, they want to be someone who is detached from everything else that's going on and the situation itself. So the role of a coach then is to help someone learn, to grow, and to achieve the results that they want to achieve. So that leads us to go on and think about, when it is that you would use coaching as opposed to other forms of interventions, and also why you would choose coaching over those other interventions. Let's start off with thinking about when to use coaching. Firstly, as a very powerful tool to help develop leaders. Very often with leaders there are training courses that they can go on, and those offer very valuable information for those leaders, and they help them start to progress and think about how they are going to achieve what they need to achieve in their role. And often you will find that even though they have attended training courses, that leaders will have particular barriers or particular things that they do that are not achieving quite what they want. And coaching is really useful to help an individual overcome those barriers and to be able to think through the situations with help so that they can progress even further and more quickly. Coaching is also very useful as a mechanism of support, really, during any changes that people might be making. So it could be that someone is getting promoted, and although they've been doing extremely well in what they've been doing before, when they get to be promoted, then they take on new responsibilities, they need new skills, and also particularly if perhaps they've come from within the team and are now taking a leader's role, they have some difficulties in adjusting, and coaching is really useful to help people with that. Other changes are just all sorts of changes that might go on in someone's job role, or perhaps when they are returning to work after maternity or paternity leave, or maybe even sickness leave. And when people have been away from work for quite a while and then come back, there's usually a lot of adjustment that needs to be made because things in work will have changed. Maybe even the members of the team will have changed, but also the person themselves will have changed whilst they've been off work. And maybe they've lost a little bit of confidence, or maybe that the situation that they've been in, whether it's sickness or looking after children or whatever it is, has meant that priorities have changed for them, and there's an adjustment that needs to be made there. So coaching is really useful to help people through these periods of transition and help them come back to work or fit in with what's going on much more easily. There's been quite a lot of research done now looking at the impact of coaching after training. So people will go on training courses, and in some organisations they have no support after that. I was reading some research the other day from Public Personnel Management called Executive Coaching as a Transfer of Training Tool. And its findings were that after training, executives' productivity was increased by 22.4%. And when coaching was added to that, the increased productivity was 88%. So sometimes people will go on training courses and they will, be very enthused by the time they finish the course and go back to work, and somehow, things don't get changed. They still do things the same old way that they used to do, and nobody is there to support them and encourage them to introduce their new skills and use their new skills. And coaching is a way that can happen and can increase the benefit that has been gained from the training program. Coaching is also useful where it would be very helpful if someone were to change their behaviour or to improve their performance. So in situations where perhaps someone, for whatever reason, is not performing to their full potential, and it's not because they don't know what to do or because they don't have the knowledge or the skills, but something else is going on that means that they really are not performing at their very best. I know this is one of the key areas where I'm asked to go in and help people in organisations. So perhaps there's been a lot of change in the organisation that's just been brought in, and someone is not handling that as well as they might. Or maybe there's a change in the team, and the relationships between the team are not working quite as well as they did. Or maybe there's some conflict that's going on. And all of these things have an impact on someone's performance. And so coaching can be used to really help people start to think about things in a different way and start to, rather than being stuck, start to progress and move forward and make changes for themselves. Another way that coaching is often used in organisations is to help bring about cultural change. I've been asked to go into quite a few organisations to help them change from a rather more authoritarian management style to a more participative one. And coaching is really useful in being able to help people shift in their thinking and thinking about how they would be leaders or how they would act when the culture is changing. I've worked in several organisations where they've wanted to bring in more of a coaching culture itself. There I've gone in and I have coached the whole of the management team individually, and then trained them in coaching so that they can coach their teams and their managers, and so those managers can coach, and so that the whole thing cascades down the organisation. And even if it is, other forms of cultural change, then very often there are problems and issues with bringing in that change with particular individuals and helping them to adjust to changes in their roles and the way that they do things. Coaching is a great way of helping organisations, teams and individuals to get better at learning. And we'll have a look at this in more detail in the module about organisational implications of coaching. But one of the things that coaching does is to help people solve problems for themselves and to help them to learn from their experience more and more. So it's a very useful tool in helping create more of a learning culture in an organisation and to help people take more responsibility for their own learning and to be able to learn better and better. Those are just some of the ways that coaching can be used in organisations and in the workplace. Coaching is also useful where it would be very helpful if someone were to change their behaviour or to improve their performance. So in situations where perhaps someone, for whatever reason, is not performing to their full potential, and it's not because they don't know what to do or because they don't have the knowledge or the skills, but something else is going on that means that they really are not performing at their very best. I know this is one of the key areas where I'm asked to go in and help people in organisations. So perhaps there's been a lot of change in the organisation that's just been brought in, and someone is not handling that as well as they might. Or maybe there's a change in the team, and the relationships between the team are not working quite as well as they did. Or maybe there's some conflict that's going on. And all of these things have an impact on someone's performance. And so coaching can be used to really help people start to think about things in a different way and start to, rather than being stuck, start to progress and move forward and make changes for themselves. Another way that coaching is often used in organisations is to help bring about cultural change. I've been asked to go into quite a few organisations to help them change from a rather more authoritarian management style to a more participative one. And coaching is really useful in being able to help people shift in their thinking and thinking about how they would be leaders or how they would act when the culture is changing. I've worked in several organisations where they've wanted to bring in more of a coaching culture itself. There I've gone in and I have coached the whole of the management team individually, and then trained them in coaching so that they can coach their teams and their managers, and so those managers can coach, and so that the whole thing cascades down the organisation. And even if it is, other forms of cultural change, then very often there are problems and issues with bringing in that change with particular individuals and helping them to adjust to changes in their roles and the way that they do things. Coaching is a great way of helping organisations, teams and individuals to get better at learning. And we'll have a look at this in more detail in the module about organisational implications of coaching. But one of the things that coaching does is to help people solve problems for themselves and to help them to learn from their experience more and more. So it's a very useful tool in helping create more of a learning culture in an organisation and to help people take more responsibility for their own learning and to be able to learn better and better. Those are just some of the ways that coaching can be used in organisations and in the workplace. So you might be thinking, so why would someone use coaching as opposed to other ways of and other interventions? Well, one of the first things is that coaching is about asking rather than telling. Coaching is about asking really powerful questions to help someone think things through in their own mind. And why is that so helpful? Because then they are going to think through things from their own model of the world. And people are usually much more committed to doing things when they've thought about them for themselves. Coaching also is about finding solutions rather than apportioning blame. One of the main things about blame is that it really doesn't move people forward very far. Whilst people are blaming other people for things that are happening or situations for things that are happening rather than thinking about what they can do differently, then very little progress happens. So coaching is very focused on finding solutions, on finding ways of moving forward and helping that person realize what they can do in order to make things better. And also, as I've said before, coaching is about solutions, but it's also about those solutions coming from that person's own model of the world, their own way of thinking. Because sometimes, giving advice is very useful, and sometimes people can help us a lot by giving advice. But often when people give us advice, that's coming from their own thinking and from where they've started and from the way that they think about things. And whoever they're talking to may not be thinking like that at all. So in coaching, what we do is to very much think about, where that person's model of the world is, where they're starting from, what are their thoughts, and working from those in order to find solutions. Also, coaching is about taking responsibility rather than blaming. So when we blame other people, as we'll find in more detail later on, the thing that happens is that we take the power away from ourselves. We give our power to those other people because until they change, then things aren't going to get any better if we think like that. Whereas, when we take responsibility for our part in things, then we can find solutions and then we can move forward. Coaching is also important because coaching is there to motivate people and to inspire them. And of course, we do our best work when we are truly inspired, when we really are passionate about what we want to do, and we're inspired to move forward, and we're very clear about how we're going to get there. Another reason for coaching and why it works so well is it really helps in helping people to create ideas about how they can overcome problems and move forward. And coaching is a very creative process because using the questions and the sort of questions that the coach asks, that helps the person to start to think of new options for themselves, new ways that they can do things, new ways that they can get success. So a coach will be able to use their communication skills to help people create these ideas. And another important reason for coaching is to lessen people's dependency on managers. Because one of the things that coaching does is to help people to find their own solutions and think about how they can do that. And to help people make decisions for themselves. And to help people be able to progress and learn and take responsibility for their own learning. And that means they don't need to go and see their manager so often to ask them for their help. Or they don't need to keep on going to the manager for decisions, so that they are more able to make good decisions for themselves. Another reason why coaching is so useful is because it's generative. By that I mean, when someone is being coached, it doesn't only help them with the situation they're in at the moment, but what it does is to help them to handle any situations better. Because over a period of time, because of the way that the coach coaches them and the questions that they ask, the person learns more and more about how they can handle things better, how they can learn better with every single situation that they come across. So that links on to the next point, which is, coaching is about helping people to continuously develop themselves. Because the questions in coaching will help the person to move forward all the time. But the process of coaching also helps the person to help themselves more and more. And so that they can continuously develop themselves as well. And in that way, they can help themselves to maximize their full potential. One of the things that a coach does is to help people to realize just how much potential that they do have. And that they are capable of doing a lot more than perhaps they think they are. And so coaching is one of those things that really helps someone to maximize their full potential. Something that isn't often thought about as far as coaching is concerned is its role in helping build relationships. Very often the way for people to progress in an organisation and the way for them to move forward with their goals and their outcomes is for them to be able to communicate really well, for them to be able to influence other people, and for them to build really good relationships with their team, with their managers, with customers, with clients, and with other people in the organisation. And one of the things that coaching can do is to help people with those relationships and help them maximize them so that the whole organisation can achieve more. More and more it's being found that using coaching almost as a management style in itself is proving very useful. So when managers and leaders have the attitude of asking rather than telling, it seems that in a lot of cases they are able to get a lot more from their team and to be able to help the teams move forward more quickly. The next thing says about a learning culture, and I've really talked about that already, but coaching is very useful for helping develop a culture where people take responsibility and where they learn better and better. And because of all of that, then coaching is really useful for developing a person's communication skills. And in fact, it's really good for developing both people's communication skills. That's the coach and the client. So in order to be a coach, you need exceptional communication skills. Coaching is one of those things that really enhances those skills and enhances your ability to be able to influence other people and to be able to help people be at their best and to move forward. So there are a lot of reasons why coaching is really useful in an organisation and really helpful in the workplace. And to get those benefits, a coach will work with someone to help them learn the best from their own experiences. And so in order to understand how that works, we're going to look at the model which is adapted from the work of David Cole, looking at the experiential learning cycle. And if we think about it, just think for a moment about something that you've learnt where you weren't given any formal training, but you just picked it up. And have a think about what was really important in order for you to be able to do that particular thing well. And the way that most of us learn from experience is in this model, and that is, that first of all we have some sort of experience. So we'll do something, and then once we've done that, we will kind of reflect on it, and we'll think about what we've done, and think about the experience, think about those things that worked really well, think about perhaps those things that didn't work quite so well, and just reflect on the whole experience. And when we've done that, then for those things that didn't work quite so well, we'll start to think about, well, how could I have done that differently? What could I have done in a different way to get better results from that? How could I have approached that in a different way? And we'll start to develop new ideas and new principles so that we can perhaps change the results that we got. So we will go out and start to think of new ideas, or do some research, or start to ask other people about different ways of approaching the situation. And then once we've thought about all of those, then we can decide on our best option, the best way that we think of moving forward, and what we're going to try next time we do it. And then we do it that way. And so the whole cycle continues then, because we have that experience and we'll reflect on that, and where it's going really well, that's fine, and where perhaps things didn't go quite so well, we start to refine it a bit more. And then think about, well, what ways could we do that? And then decide on the best thing to do next, the best way to try next. And so carry on round and round that cycle until we're really happy with the results that we're getting. And a coach's job is to help someone go through that cycle. A coach's job is to help them reflect on things that they have done, think about, what's worked really well, think about what's happening at the moment and those things that are really helping them achieve the results that they want, and to think about those particular areas where perhaps things are not going quite as well as they might want them to. Or perhaps it's something totally new that they're approaching, and to get them to reflect on how they might approach that so that they get the goals that they particularly want. And then the coach will start to help the person think about the options that are open to them, think about new ways of achieving what it is that they want to achieve, and then to actually decide on the best option, the best way to move forward, and how they can change things. And then they will go off and do whatever it is, and then come back to the coach and progress further. So this experiential learning cycle is really important to a coach, and very often your questions will be based on that cycle, on thinking about how you can get people to reflect on what's happening at the moment, to set goals for themselves, to think of new options, new ways of doing things, new ideas, and to decide on what's going to be the best option to move forward. And then when they've left